you're the chair of voter support in a local party, and by local I mean like the county level, in Arlington County. What does that kind of mean? What is it you typically do as part of that job? And a volunteer job, I should say.
I think the name doesn't really say much, it's pretty vague, but the 5 areas that we specifically have identified in Arlington through the bylaws is voter education, voter registration, early voter poll greeting, early voter outreach, voter protection, and rides to the polls. And I assume a lot of other counties do the same type of thing, and they may call it something different, I'm not sure.
Right, and these are things that you were coordinating and getting involved with some of them. And you were just saying you've only been doing this particular job about a month. You've been involved with local politics for quite a while, I think.
Right, since 2017. I retired from the military in 2017, and very disappointed with the way our national politics were going at that time, and felt I had to contribute. I'd rather be home sitting in my office reading a book, but...
Was it a little like a call to duty for you?
I guess so, yeah. I just felt like I couldn't sit by and not do anything.
Right. So tell me about the voter protection. What does that activity involve?
That's actually very technical. The state provides a lot of guidance for that. That's to make sure that no one's denied their right to vote. And so we actually have 2 people doing it here in Arlington, someone who gained a lot of experience outside. We also have a young man who's a student at the University of Virginia, and so he's not even here all the time, but he's real eager and interested. And so they coordinate with the state, and we make sure that the voting locations are covered with people who can respond if someone faces a problem trying to exercise their right to vote.
And to be very clear, because voting, I always think it's a complex ecosystem, and a lot of people are involved, a lot of people have different roles. The voters obviously are at the center of it. And at the county level, the registrar hires election workers, election officers is what we call them in Virginia.
Right.
And then they'll have poll watchers from a party or a campaign.
Right.
We'll have poll greeters who are very often outside. In Virginia, they have to stay outside the 40-foot line,
yeah.
But they're there to educate voters and make a pitch for their candidate to send to the candidate. Voter protection is not any of those.
Right.
So I'm wondering, what's a typical day at the polls like for someone doing voting protection?
If there's a problem identified, someone's been told they can't vote, then those people would elevate it up through the state chain of command to make sure lawyers are contacted or whatever is done to try to make sure that person does have the ability to vote, whether it's because they have to go to a different location or because something was wrong on the voter registration, and I don't know all the legal laws and stuff there.
Right, but they become someone at the end of a helpline,
yeah.
in a sense. Another big thing in Virginia we've had, I think very successfully, early voting.
Yes.
We have a fairly long early voting process.
Yeah.
45 days, at least 45 days,
right.
before the actual election day.
Yeah.
But not the last 2 days, because we finish early voting on the Saturday before the Tuesday. That's kind of a challenge,
yes,
because it's one thing to be able to recruit volunteers to help with rides to the polls on a very, very targeted, one specific day. But now we're talking about 6 weeks,
yeah.
6 or 7 weeks. What's your experience been with that? Has that been difficult?
It's a huge challenge, and we have a vice chair in voter support, Paula Theed, who's been doing that for a couple of years now, and she's just outstanding. But it's a huge amount of work. It's stressful. She was looking to potentially step down because there's been so much work, and I've promised her that I will recruit more help. That's what I kind of see as my role. Is you asked about the voter protection earlier, and all these areas. I'm not, and I don't need to be an expert in any of these areas. Right. What I do need is to recruit great vice chairs who become knowledgeable and do this, and then my job is to recruit additional help when they need it, or go out and get, if they need logistics or other support, that I try to make sure that's available. But covering the early poll, the poll greeting for that early voting period is a huge challenge, and it varies from year to year. In a presidential year, we try to cover it as much as we can.
Right.
And it's even more challenging because it's not just the days, but it's multiple locations.
Right.
And so I think we're very successful in covering almost all of it this past presidential election. This year's a governor's election, still extremely important, and we'll have to decide how much we try to cover and whether we're able to realistically cover it all.
And then voter education. Is that a big challenge in terms of understanding how to communicate? We have so many different ways people communicate, and a lot of it's generationally defined. How do you even try to do that?
I think voter education is huge, and that's a big pet project of mine, because it's not defined currently in Arlington DEMS in the bylaws. There's no definition of what we do with voter education. There's no specific vice chair for voter education. One of the things I'm trying to do is incorporate voter education into every single thing we do, whether it's early vote or poll greeting or voter registration, because a lot of people in Arlington are already registered. So we may have people sitting out there for a 2-hour period, and they may only run into a handful of people, 1 or 2 even, that haven't registered yet. But they can interact with a lot of other people who may not know there's an election this year. And in Virginia, as you know, there are elections every single year, so
Yes.
it should be simple, but it's not. People don't know. And maybe they came from another state where they only vote on even years.
Right.
But whatever it is, people don't know there's an election every year. People don't know where they can go to vote. People don't know when early voting started. There's people we run into. One of the saddest stories for me, or not, but just troubling. You mentioned there's 2 days before Election Day, the end of early voting and Election Day. I was working at a staging location where we launch canvassers out to knock on doors, and we're right across from an actual polling location on Election Day, and just a couple blocks from where early voting is done at the county building. We had 2 people show up and ask, "Can I vote here today?"
Right.
One was not a native English speaker, so he had probably challenges getting the information, but we gave it to him, and I hope that he showed up on Tuesday in the right location to vote. The other was, native English speaker, young man, and he knew the voting location was across the street, but he thought he could vote there, I think, early voting, and that's just not, there's only like 4 sites for early voting.
And sometimes it's only 3. At the very beginning, often, not just in Arlington, but around Virginia, there'll just be 1. It'll be the registrar's office.
Right. So even at a stationary location, not even going out searching for people, we had people come to us and not be interested in voting and not know how or where to do it. So, Arlington's an incredibly well-educated area, but people still don't know.
Right, because we all know different things. Yeah, and that's why when people use the phrase "make a plan to vote," make a plan to vote, I think the intent of that is to try to commit you a little more.
Yes.
But it's really also to make sure you understand the details.
Right.
What's going to be on the ballot, what time can you do it, where can you do it. So it's really important to, I like to say it as, let's talk up voting, let's talk through voting.
Yes.
With every voter out there.
Right.
You've been engaged in politics since you retired from the military. Did a lot of what you experienced in the military, do you think it set you up well for this kind of community service? Did it motivate you in some ways?
I think there's motivation. It prepared me. I spent a lot of time overseas working with our international partners, helping prepare them to get into NATO. And I worked in small offices and with foreign governments, so it's a little bit of, you have to learn your audience or understand your audience.
Right.
And so that's helped, because dealing an all-volunteer organization like Arlington DEMS is, you need to find what people are interested in and match their interests with jobs that need to be done. And so I think my experience has helped with that, and just being willing to listen to people, and because you're asking them to do work for free, so
right.
you have to listen to them, find out what they want, and allow them to get a sense of accomplishment and achievement while they're volunteering.
I totally hear you on that. I've done a lot of I've worked with a lot of volunteers to produce media productions, community media, and it's harder than if you have a budget, because you've got to be respectful of their time, you've got to motivate them.
Right.
These are stressful times. Are you, in terms of either Virginia or the United States, are you hopeful about the future of democracy? And if you are hopeful, what gives you hope?
I don't want to be incredibly pessimistic. I'm not an incredibly optimistic person, but I just couldn't. I don't give up. I mean, no matter
right.
how difficult the situation, I always believe that something can happen. Right now, the odds are really, I think, against American democracy. But we have a lot of really committed and caring and dedicated people, and you can't give up, because you never know when a miracle might happen, or it doesn't. Not even a miracle, but just something. Things change.
Things change,
and you never know. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have predicted where we are today,
right.
10, 20 years ago. So I'm worried about American democracy. I think I've spent a lot of time overseas, and I've seen countries that fell apart. I served in Bosnia. I've served in the Baltic states shortly after the Soviet Union collapsed, and I saw the difficulties and the challenges. But I think when I was a young officer, or a young cadet even, being trained to fight against the Soviet Union, I don't think we ever anticipated that the Soviet Union would collapse
right.
relatively peacefully and launch at least some successful democracies.
Yeah.
So that was a form of a miracle, and I had hoped that at this point in my life I wouldn't still be struggling to try to protect democracy, but it's still needed, and hopefully we'll be as lucky and successful as things were back in 1990.
All right, well, thank you for all you do for the community and for democracy.
Thank you.
Thank you.